All right, here's a few news articles. This is something the governor of Texas announced a few days ago, and now he's doing it. He doesn't like migrants coming in through the border, so he's busing some of them to Washington, D.C. Apparently, just a few of them so far, and it's not enough, I think, to actually make any difference about how many of the migrants you have to take care of or anything. It's a publicity stunt. He dumped them off right in front of Fox News, so, like almost everything that he's done in the last couple of years, this is a sleazy publicity stunt to promote him politically, by trying to make sure that he's far over on the right and nobody can run to the right of him, which seems to be what's happening all over the country, as our political system has somehow failed in its purpose of electing people that represent the people and instead encouraged everybody to run to the most extreme position. Apparently because of gerrymandering in our antiquated first-past-the-gate election system instead of ranked choice voting. Anyway, that's what he did, and these people say they don't want to go to Washington, but they took the bus ride. He dropped them off there with nothing. They're getting help from like local churches and stuff to move to other parts of America where they want to live, and it's more theater about immigration. So I didn't know this at all. It was very interesting. In Canada, apparently, there are strict regulations of television requiring that you carry a certain amount of Canadian-developed content. And Trudeau wants to do the same thing to YouTube. And this article is written by a Canadian YouTuber who says there is no need for this. YouTube is already diverse. There's a lot of successful Canadian YouTubers, and we don't need the government coming in and like trying to measure where you're from and have you prove it and make sure you're sufficiently diverse and all that. But it's an interesting fact. I did not know that they had that kind of law in Canada. I would imagine that Canada would have an issue with being totally overrun by American media, and that might be why they passed a law like that. Anyway. So Zuckerberg continues to full tilt take his company, they used to be called Facebook, and blast it into his thing called the Metaverse, which seems ridiculous, poorly planned, poorly executed. It's a disaster like the Apple Lisa, I think, or like that matter for CNN Plus. Just a ridiculous business venture that's expensive and a total flop. And in Facebook's case, Mark Zuckerberg cannot be said no to. It's a dual-class shareholder system, so nobody can buy enough shares ever to vote him out. So he's the king, and his word is law. And now, the latest trick is they're going to sell items in Facebook's metaverse, so you can buy, I don't know, fancy clothes or a magic sword or something. And it's not even an NFT. It's just an object in this, like a game object you might get in World of Warcraft. But they're going to charge money for it, and they're going to charge a 47% fee on it all, even larger than the 30% fee that Apple charges on everything in the App Store. And people are pretty horrified by that. So we'll see what happens. So far, I don't see anybody that has anything good to say about Facebook's metaverse. I think there'll definitely be virtual reality in the future and enhanced reality, but it doesn't look like the Facebook brand of it is going to be a success. I was surprised to see this. The inflation is at record highs, or it's the largest it's been in 40 years, not really record highs, but very high, 8.5% annual rate, which we all know. Everybody can see the prices of things going up. And yet they say that they expect inflation to go down now. And this is not the Biden administration, which has been lying about inflation all along, saying it was all due to oil when only a small part of it's due to oil, saying it was transitory when they didn't have any evidence for that. This is real, the Bank of America. Real analysts say it's probably going to come down, and that's because the price of oil has already peaked and the price of oil is coming down. So they're not saying it's going to come down to a reasonable level like 2% anytime soon, but they're saying it's not going to stay at 8.5%. It's going to go down a point or two pretty soon because the part from oil is going to decrease. And that means gas prices will come down from their current very high level, I guess, which would certainly be very nice. Anyway, I do not think the inflation is going to come down enough to give the Democrats much of a hope in the midterms. I think we're in for Republican-dominated midterms and probably a Republican victory in 2024. But I suppose it's possible something will change by then, but I don't see anything good happening. between now and then. So this was sort of interesting. The Villages are a retirement community in Florida that is very, very supportive of Donald Trump. And two of these guys admitted that they voted twice, once at whatever their old home was and once at their new home. And they were given a slap on the wrist, like 50 hours of community service and probation. What's interesting is there was a black woman who had just gotten out of prison and went to an election official and asked if it was okay if she would vote. And they told her, sure, you can vote. And she voted. And when they decided later that she wasn't allowed to vote, they gave her 5 years more prison time. So it is spectacularly unfair what happens to people who commit voter fraud in America. Although all the cases I've ever seen never amount to much of anything, enough votes to sway any election. But it does seem like it's a very rare crime, and it's enforced in a very capricious, erratic way. I didn't know it was this bad. Sri Lanka just defaulted on their debt, declared bankruptcy. People say they are starving. They have no food at all. They say the government has completely mismanaged the economy. It's one guy and his relatives being put in political positions. He did stuff like keep printing money, ignoring the consequence on inflation. And so people are completely broke. It's a disaster. There's huge protests. There's a sort of tent city set up with people protesting and living out on the street, complaining that there's no food, there's no nothing. It sounds horrible. I was there a couple of years ago. I was brought in by a company to give some talks, and they were just talking to me a month ago about hiring me to teach some classes there. And then I didn't hear anything more, and I guess I can see why. It looks like it's just complete madness there now. And right now they're not going to be importing any teachers. Hopefully they get that under control. Sounds really bad. And as I think we've all seen, the Republicans are getting more and more gun crazed. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene with a gun. There's Lauren Boebert, whose whole platform is guns. And also, as we've seen, Madison Cawthorn and the others increasingly talking about the purpose of these guns is to shoot Democrats and start a civil war and take over the government by force, which is increasingly a mainstream Republican plan. So, it's a scary time in America. Everybody has so many guns, and there are so many people more and more talking about a violent civil war to put their political party in power, which is, that used to be what America was proud of, is that we did not do that, although we did it in the Civil War. Certainly, these people talk about starting a civil war like it would be fun, and they are wrong. It is not fun. We do not want a civil war. Whatever you're mad about, it is really not worth having a civil war, but they think they can win a political position by pretending that it would be cool to have a civil war, which it would not be. So I heard this story a couple of years ago. With the early information then, I thought this guy just went and taught like a harmless workshop in North Korea, but one of the Ethereum developers, in fact, was invited to go to North Korea to train them how to launder money and conceal money and evade sanctions. And he had to conceal the fact that he was traveling to North Korea, and he knew he was evading sanctions. Now, when I went to China for DEF CON China, they wanted to talk, and I said I could teach a cryptography talk, and they said, no, you better not, because that would violate American export law, which I checked, and that was true. I can't teach cryptography in China, so I didn't. But you can't do much of anything with North Korea. They have the strictest sanctions, as you would imagine, of anybody in the world, except maybe Russia now. And this guy was totally sneaking in there to give them information about cryptocurrency, which was in violation of the export laws. So now he's got 5 years in prison. Virgil Griffith. So, but it sounds like he totally knew what he was doing. He knew it was wrong, and he tried to sneak in and do it anyway. So I guess there's no excuse for that. Intel has shipped quantum computing hardware to Argonne National Lab, one of the major American military research labs. They're unclear, sort of cagey about what it is, but quantum computing the hardware is making great leaps forward. People have several different hardware devices to make a qubit now, although none of them that have ever been demonstrated publicly are powerful enough to do anything very important yet, like crack keys for cryptography that are strong enough to matter. But everybody is rapidly developing this technology, which we assume in 10 or 20 years will turn into a whole new generation of computing hardware that will be very valuable. But right now, it's all just prototypes. And I think that's it for this.